At 47 years old, Maggie Reynolds thought she had everything. A Park Avenue penthouse, a millionaire husband, a perfect life. But one phone call at 7:32 on a Tuesday morning would reveal that her entire 22-year marriage was nothing but a beautiful lie. Her husband wasn't just cheating with a 28-year-old actress. He wasn't just getting her pregnant. He was stealing millions from their charity foundation and setting up Maggie to take the fall. He wanted her destroyed, humiliated, sent to prison for crimes she never committed. What Richard Reynolds didn't know? His wife had a secret that would turn his world upside down. A secret worth $200 million. A secret that would make him regret ever underestimating the woman he married. This is the story of how one betrayed wife went from victim to victor, and how the man who tried to ruin her ended up in handcuffs while she built an empire. This story will show you that your worth is never defined by someone else's opinion of you, and that sometimes the greatest chapter of your life begins when someone else decides to end theirs with you. The call that would tear her world apart came at exactly 7:32 on a Tuesday morning. Maggie Reynolds knew the precise time because she was staring at the digital clock on her kitchen counter. She watched the seconds tick away as the coffee in her hands turned cold. The voice on the other end was professional and unfamiliar, asking, "Is this Mrs. Reynolds?" "Yes, this is Margaret Reynolds," she replied. "Ma'am, my name is Detective Sarah Walsh, and I am with the Manhattan Police Department. We need you to come to the station. This is about your husband, Richard Reynolds." The coffee mug slipped from Maggie's grasp and shattered on the marble floor of their penthouse on Park Avenue. "Mrs. Reynolds, are you still there?" Maggie could only stare at the dark brown liquid spreading across the perfect white floor, feeling as if the 22 years of her meticulously built life were starting to fracture right along with it. "I am here. What happened? Is Rick okay?" "No, ma'am, he has not been physically harmed. However, an incident has occurred involving your husband and a young actress by the name of Sophia Blake. The media is already describing it as the biggest scandal of the year." Just then, their housekeeper, Maria, came into the room with a worried look on her face. She had been taking care of the Reynolds home for 15 years and had never seen Maggie so much as drop a tissue. "Are you all right, Mrs. Maggie?" Maria asked in her soft accent, already starting to clean the broken pieces of porcelain. Maggie raised a hand to stop her, the phone still pressed tightly to her ear. "Detective Walsh, what kind of incident are you talking about?" "Ma'am, your husband was photographed leaving the Ritz-Carlton at 2 in the morning with Miss Blake. We are also investigating allegations of financial misconduct at his company. We need you to come in to answer a few questions." Each word felt like a punch to Maggie's stomach. Her millionaire husband, who would soon be her ex-husband, was not only cheating but was also apparently a thief. The flawless life she had constructed, the strategic social events, the glamorous charity balls, and the impeccably decorated penthouse were all collapsing around her. "I will be there in 1 hour," she somehow managed to say. "Mrs. Maggie?" Maria was still standing nearby with a broom, her expression filled with concern. "It is okay, Maria. Please just leave it for now." Maggie's voice sounded foreign, even to herself, unnaturally calm. "I have to get dressed and go downtown." She walked toward her bedroom as if in a trance, her bare feet making no sound on the imported Italian marble. Their master bedroom was a shrine to Rick's wealth and success. It featured 1,200 thread count Egyptian cotton sheets, a custom-made mahogany headboard that was more expensive than most cars, and a walk-in closet bigger than the average Manhattan apartment. Maggie stood before her mirror, looking at the reflection of a 47-year-old woman who had just learned her entire existence was a lie. Her shoulder-length auburn hair was perfectly coiffed from her salon visit the day before. Her skin was flawless, a testament to the best dermatologist money could buy. She was dressed in a silk nightgown that had cost $800, and none of it made any difference now. She chose a navy blue Chanel suit, preparing for battle. As she put on her clothes, her mind cleared, moving beyond the initial shock and towards something colder and more resolute. After 22 years of marriage, she was learning from a police detective that her husband was unfaithful, not from Rick himself, and not from the city's gossips who always seemed to know everything first. She was hearing it from a total stranger over the phone. The elevator ride down to the ground floor felt like it took forever. Harold, the doorman, tipped his hat as she walked by. "Good morning, Mrs. Reynolds. Should I get a car for you?" "Yes, Harold. I am going to the police station downtown." If Harold felt any surprise, he did not let it show. In a city like Manhattan, the rich often had very peculiar destinations. The cab ride through the morning traffic gave Maggie a moment to think. She took out her phone and did the one thing she had been trying to avoid. She searched for her husband's name online. The headlines were impossible to miss. CEO Richard Reynolds in hotel scandal with actress Sophia Blake. Reynolds Industries, stock takes a nosedive amid controversy. Power couple heading for divorce? The pictures were undeniable. There was Rick, her sophisticated 52-year-old husband wrapped in an intimate embrace with a woman young enough to be their daughter. Sophia Blake was 28 years old, blonde, stunning, and the exact opposite of Maggie. Her phone began to vibrate with text messages from worried friends, but she ignored every single one. There would be time to deal with that later. The police station was a formidable granite building in lower Manhattan, already surrounded by news vans and a swarm of photographers. Maggie paid the cab driver and walked straight through the crowd with her head held high, completely ignoring the questions being shouted at her and the constant flashes from the cameras. "Mrs. Reynolds, how long did you know about the affair?" "Margaret, are you planning to file for divorce? Do you have any comment on your husband's business dealings?" She finally pushed through the glass doors of the station, thankful for the sudden quiet inside. "Are you Mrs. Reynolds?" A woman in her 40s, with a badge on her belt, walked up to her. "I am Detective Walsh. I appreciate you coming in. Can you please tell me what is really happening, Detective? Let us go sit down, and I will explain the situation." They went into a small conference room with harsh fluorescent lights and cheap industrial carpeting. Detective Walsh placed a thick file on the table. "Mrs. Reynolds, we have been looking into some financial irregularities at Reynolds Industries for several months now. Last night, we were conducting surveillance and saw your husband meeting with Miss Blake. While observing them, we uncovered evidence of what we believe to be embezzlement from his own company." The detective's words felt like a bucket of ice water being thrown on Maggie. "Embezzlement? It seems your husband has been transferring funds from the company's charitable foundation to his personal accounts. We are talking about several $1,000,000 over the last 3 years. Maggie felt a cold knot form in the pit of her stomach. The charitable foundation was her entire world. She had started it, managed it, and planned every single fundraiser. Her name was on every official document. "Detective, are you implying that I am also under investigation?" "At this point, we are simply trying to gather information." "But Mrs. Reynolds, I have to ask you, did you know anything about these financial transfers?" "Absolutely not." Her answer was immediate and completely firm. "I handle the day-to-day work of the foundation, but Rick always took care of all the financial matters. He used to say it was all too complicated for me to deal with." As the words left her mouth, Maggie felt a surge of anger at herself. Too complicated for her, as if she were a child incapable of understanding money. "We will need you to return tomorrow. with your lawyer to provide a formal statement, Detective Walsh explained. In the meantime, I suggest you find a very good divorce attorney. And Mrs. Reynolds, yes? I would also advise you to freeze all of your joint bank accounts and get copies of every financial record you can, today. Maggie walked out of the police station feeling as if she were moving through deep water. The world around her looked completely different. The morning sun felt too bright, the city traffic sounded too loud, and the faces of the people on the street seemed hostile. Her phone would not stop ringing with calls from friends, reporters, and business partners. She turned it off and flagged down another taxi. "Where to, lady?" the driver asked. She nearly said home, but then she stopped herself. The penthouse was not her home anymore. It was just a beautiful cage she had been living in without even knowing it. Reynolds Industries, she said. Midtown. The time had come to finally confront her millionaire ex-husband. The glass skyscrapers of Midtown Manhattan shimmered in the morning light as Maggie's taxi stopped in front of Reynolds Industries. The 50-story building was a monument Rick had built for himself, with his name carved in gold letters on the marble exterior. It had been 3 hours since the phone call that destroyed her world, and now Maggie was standing in the marble lobby, listening to employees whisper and stare. News spreads quickly in the corporate world, and everyone knew something was terribly wrong when the chief executive officer's wife showed up looking like she was preparing for a war. The elevator ride up to the 40th floor felt like she was being taken to her own execution. Maggie watched the floor numbers light up, each one bringing her closer to a confrontation she never thought she would have. Rick's secretary, Amanda, looked up with undisguised panic as Maggie walked out of the elevator. "Mrs. Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds is currently in a meeting, a very important one. Perhaps you could return later. Amanda, I have known you for 8 years. Do not lie to me right now." Maggie's voice was calm, but there was a sharp, steely edge to it. "Where is my husband? He is in boardroom B," Amanda whispered, avoiding her gaze. Maggie walked down the long hallway she had walked down hundreds of times before for company parties and holiday events. The walls were covered with pictures of Rick shaking hands with politicians, movie stars, and industry titans. In most of those photos, she was standing right next to him, smiling gracefully, playing the part of the perfect corporate wife. She stopped just outside the heavy wooden doors of boardroom B and could hear voices from inside. She recognized Rick's deep voice, et poem, along with the voices of several other top executives. "The most important thing is that we control this story," Rick was saying. "I do not care about the cost. Pay off anyone who needs to be paid off, and threaten anyone who needs to be threatened." "Rick, the pictures are already all over the internet," another man said. "And what about the police investigation?" "Let me handle the police," Rick replied. "I have given enough money to their charity funds over the years. They will cooperate." At that moment, Maggie pushed the doors open without bothering to knock. 7 men in expensive suits turned and stared at her. Rick was at the head of the conference table, his silver hair perfectly in place, his Armani suit flawless. He looked like the picture of a powerful chief executive officer, right up until you looked into his eyes. "Gentlemen," Rick said after a beat of shocked quiet, "would you mind giving my wife and me a moment?" The executives scurried out like chastened schoolboys, not one of them daring to meet Maggie's eyes. Once the door clicked shut, the silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "Maggie," Rick started, adopting the patient voice he reserved for explaining basic ideas to those he deemed his inferiors. "I know what this probably looks like." "Let's just get to it, Rick," she said, using his favorite phrase against him. "How long has this been going on? How long has what been going on? Do not play dumb with me. How long have you been with Sophia Blake?" Rick adjusted his tie. a telltale sign of his nervousness, a nervous habit he had when he was cornered. Look, Maggie, it is not that simple. You have no idea the kind of pressure I am under, what it takes to run a company of this scale. How long? Her question sliced through the air, hanging there between them. Rick turned his back on her, walking over to the massive windows that overlooked the city. 8 months, he finally admitted. 8 months. While she was busy organizing charity balls and hosting perfect dinner parties, playing the role of the flawless wife, he was off building a whole other life. And what about the embezzlement? Rick whipped around, his face turning a deep shade of crimson. That is not embezzlement. That money was mine to begin with. I built this company from the ground up. I started that foundation. Maggie shot back, her voice finally rising. I am the one who wrote the mission statement. I planned every single fundraiser. I was the one who charmed every donor. And you have been funneling money out of it. I have not funneled anything. I have been repositioning assets to shield them from any potential lawsuits. It is called financial planning, Maggie, a concept that is a bit too complex for you. Stop. The single word was as sharp as a slap. Stop speaking to me like I am some kind of fool, Richard. I may not have a business degree from an Ivy League school, but I am not an idiot. For a fleeting second, a look that resembled regret crossed Rick's face, but it vanished so fast that Maggie wondered if she had only imagined it. Maggie, please sit down. Let's handle this like two rational adults. I am handling this like an adult. You are the one who has been behaving like a spoiled teenager with a limitless credit card. She kept her feet planted, her knuckles white as she gripped the back of a plush leather chair. So, tell me about Sophia. What is there to tell? Is she pregnant? The quiet that followed was heavy and suffocating. Rick's jaw clenched, and Maggie knew the answer long before he said a word. Yes. The confirmation landed like a punch to the gut. 22 years of marriage, and they had never been able to conceive. It was not for a lack of trying. They had poured a small fortune into fertility clinics, suffered through endless tests, invasive procedures, and crushing disappointments. Rick had always insisted it did not matter, that their life together was whole without children. Apparently, it only did not matter when those children would have been hers. How far along is she? 4 months? 4 months. Maggie quickly did the calculation in her head. Sophia Blake must have conceived right around Rick's 50th birthday party, the massive, extravagant bash Maggie had spent 3 solid months planning. I want a divorce, Rick declared, the words tumbling out of him. Maggie, I am asking for a divorce. Sophia is having my baby, and I intend to marry her. And just like that, it was over. 22 years of her life, erased in a matter of seconds. I see. Maggie's voice was remarkably even, but she felt a tectonic shift inside her, as the final pillar of her old life crumbled into dust. And you figured you would cushion the blow by stealing millions of dollars first? I have not stolen a thing, Rick snapped back. Everything I have done is perfectly legal. And honestly, Maggie, you ought to be thanking me. Did you really think you could have had any of this without me? He waved his hand around the luxurious boardroom, a gesture that encompassed the penthouse, the designer clothes, their entire lifestyle. You were a complete nobody when we met. Just some secretary at a law office. A paralegal, Maggie corrected him softly. Whatever. The point is, I made you who you are. I gave you a life you could only have dreamed of on your own. And now you are going to stand there and act like you have the right to tear down everything I have built just because I happened to fall in love with someone else. His words were designed to wound, and they did, because there was just enough truth in them to make them sting. Maggie had been a paralegal back then, working grueling hours for little pay, crammed into a tiny studio apartment with a roommate. Rick had been her whirlwind entry into a world of unbelievable privilege, but she had earned her place there. She had been the model corporate spouse, the charming hostess, the relentless charity fundraiser. She had put her own dreams on hold for his, molding her entire identity around his success. And now he was brushing it all aside as if she were nothing more than a beautiful, expensive trinket. "You are right about one thing, Rick," she said at last. "I was a nobody when you met me, but I am not a nobody anymore. What is that supposed to mean?" "It means you are about to learn what kind of woman you have been married to for the last 22 years. She started for the door, then stopped and looked back. "Oh, and Rick, you probably want to get your lawyer on the phone, because I am about to call mine." She walked out of that boardroom with her chin held high, leaving Rick standing alone in the ruins of his collapsing empire. As the elevator descended, Maggie felt a sensation she had not felt in ages. Freedom. It was terrifying, and it was thrilling. Her phone showed 17 missed calls. She ignored every single one except for a text from Janet Cooper, her best friend from college. It read, "Saw the news, coming over, I have wine, tissues, and my lawyer's number." For the first time all day, Maggie allowed herself to smile. That night, Maggie found herself sitting in Janet Cooper's cozy Brooklyn brownstone, soaking in the comforting chaos of a real family home. She could hear teenagers bickering upstairs, a dog barking out back, and the scent of something wonderful wafting from the kitchen. "Honey, listen to me," Janet said, pouring them both a very generous glass of red wine. "Guys like Rick never change. Their tastes just get more expensive." Janet was Maggie's polar opposite, loud, fiercely opinionated, and totally at ease with herself. They had been roommates back in college and had stayed best friends through 2 decades of completely different lives. While Maggie had married into money, Janet had married for love, creating a loud, messy, and joyful family with her architect husband. "I just keep replaying everything, thinking I should have known," Maggie admitted, taking the wine with gratitude. All those late nights, he claimed, were at the office, the business trips that suddenly started piling up this past year. "Oh, stop. The only thing you should have expected was a line of women trying to get their hands on your wealthy husband, sweetie. You trusted him. That is what you are supposed to do when you are married." Janet plopped down in her favorite armchair, a comfy, worn-out piece of furniture that Rick would have despised. "The only question that matters now is, what is your next move? I have no idea. For a moment back there, I felt like a completely different person, the way I stood up to him. But now," Maggie gestured vaguely, feeling lost. "Who am I without him? I do not have a career. I do not have any money of my own." "Hold it right there," Janet cut in, her tone sharp. "You have been running a multi-million-dollar charitable foundation for a decade. You have organized events that brought in more money than some small countries even have. You speak 3 different languages, you have a master's degree, and you are one of the most intelligent women I know. Do not you dare let some self-absorbed jerk of an ex-husband make you feel worthless." Maggie felt the sting of tears in her eyes. "I just feel so incredibly stupid, Janet. 22 years and I never had a clue. That does not make you stupid. It makes you a trusting person. And there is a huge difference." Janet leaned in closer. "So, what did the lawyer say?" "I have not called one yet." "Wait, Maggie, you have to get on that, especially if Rick has been hiding money." "I know, you are right. I will call someone first thing in the morning." Dumb. Maggie put her wine glass on the table. "First, I need to go home and grab a few things. You know, important documents, my jewelry, anything I do not want to get tied up in a messy divorce." "Do you want me to go with you?" "No. This is something I have to do by myself." An hour later, Maggie was standing in her own penthouse, but it felt like she was there for the very last time. The whole apartment had a different feel now, like she was walking through a museum exhibit titled Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, circa 2025. The fresh flowers that Rick had delivered every week, the expensive art they had picked out together, the framed pictures of their supposedly perfect life, it all felt like it belonged to someone else. She went straight to Rick's study, his private den of dark wood and leather where he handled his most secret business deals. She had always been allowed in, but she never stayed long. It was Rick's territory. But now she scanned the room with a fresh perspective, searching for his secrets. His desk was clean. Rick was far too clever to leave incriminating evidence out in the open. But she knew about the safe, concealed behind a panel of fake books. And she knew the combination. He had never bothered to change it from their anniversary, 05-18-2003. The safe was much bigger than she remembered, and it was crammed with papers she had never laid eyes on. There were stock certificates, deeds to properties, and insurance policies. It was the entire paper trail of their shared life, all sorted with Rick's usual obsessive precision. Tucked at the very bottom of the stack, she found something that made her whole body tremble. Adoption papers, with her name right on them. Margaret Sarah Harrison, born May 18, 1978. Adopted by James and Linda Morrison on September 3, 1978. Maggie just stared at the documents, her thoughts spinning. She had known her whole life that she was adopted. The Morrisons had told her as soon as she was old enough to grasp the concept, but she never knew her birth name or a single thing about her biological parents. The documents named her birth father as William Harrison of Dallas, Texas. His age at the time of her birth was 25. His occupation was listed as the oil industry. Scrawled in the margin was a phone number with a note in Rick's neat handwriting that read, "Emergency contact only." With shaking hands, Maggie took out her phone and typed William Harrison Dallas Oil into the search bar. The results that popped up made her collapse into Rick's big leather chair. William Harrison was not just in the oil industry. In Texas, he practically was the oil industry. Harrison Petroleum stood as one of the country's most prominent privately owned oil companies, with an estimated value of $8 billion. According to her research, William Harrison had been searching for his daughter for more than 4 decades. "Well, I will be," Maggie murmured, borrowing a phrase her adoptive father often used when surprised. She used her phone to capture images of every paper in the safe before returning them to their precise, original positions. However, she held onto the adoption documents and the phone number. During a final walk-through of the penthouse, Maggie gathered a small suitcase with her essential belongings. Just as she shut the bedroom closet door, her phone vibrated with a text from a number she did not recognize. It read, "I saw the news about your husband. If you want the real story about his activities, meet me at Cafe Luna tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Come by yourself." Maggie stared at the words for a moment before deleting the entire message. She had dealt with enough truth for one day. As she departed the penthouse, however, she felt a profound shift within herself. For the first time in 22 years, she was no longer the wife of Richard Reynolds. She was the daughter of Margaret Harrison, a fact that could alter the course of her entire life. Arriving at Janet's house, she presented the adoption papers to her friend. "Oh my goodness, Maggie," Janet said, her voice a whisper as she examined the documents. "Do you have any idea what this means? It means there is a chance I have family I have never known, and it means you might have 8 billion arguments against worrying about Rick's divorce offer." Maggie glanced at the phone number one more time. The next day, she would face a decision: call a man who could be her father, or she could keep trying to piece together a life that was already shattered. But that night, for the first time in a very long time, she experienced a feeling that resembled hope. Perhaps this was the beginning of a whole new chapter. The following morning was filled with the sound of a private jet's engines preparing for takeoff on the runway at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Maggie had placed the call to Texas at sunrise, her hands trembling as she dialed the number from Rick's safe. Harrison residence, a woman with a distinct Southern accent had said, My name is Margaret Reynolds. I am trying to reach William Harrison. I have reason to believe he is my father." The silence that followed was so long that Maggie feared the connection had been lost. Then, a deep and authoritative man's voice came through from the background, saying, "Give me the phone." "Margaret?" The voice was precisely as she had pictured it, a Texas accent made gentle by time and deep feeling. "Is that truly you, little girl?" That term of endearment shattered a wall she had built inside herself. "I believe so. I possess adoption records that name you as my biological father. Now you listen to me, young lady. I have spent 47 years searching for you. What city are you in?" "New York. I am dispatching my aircraft. Do not go anywhere until it arrives." That conversation had taken place 6 hours earlier. Now Maggie was seated in the plush cabin of a Gulfstream jet, observing the American landscape glide by from 40,000 feet above. She had never experienced a private flight. Rick always saw it as a pointless extravagance, and the quiet sophistication of it all felt unreal. The flight attendant, a woman close to Maggie's age, with kind features, served her coffee in a real china cup. "Mr. Harrison is incredibly eager to meet you," she mentioned. "He has carried a baby picture of you for more years than I have been in his employment." "How long have you worked for him?" 23 years, and in all of that time, I have never witnessed him as joyful as he was this morning when he learned you were finally coming home." "Home?" The word sounded foreign to her. Maggie had never considered Texas her home. While she was born there, she grew up in upstate New York with the Morrisons, kind individuals who provided her with a secure, middle-class upbringing. They had passed away in a car crash 10 years prior, leaving her with no relatives other than Rick. As the airplane started its descent toward Dallas, Maggie leaned her head against the window. The city stretched out in every direction, a testament to oil wealth and Texan drive. "Is this your first visit to Dallas?" the flight attendant inquired. "My first visit back," Maggie replied. The Harrison Ranch was located a 40-minute drive from the city, reached by a private road that wound for miles through gentle hills dotted with oil rigs. Maggie rode in the back of a black Range Rover, looking at a countryside that should have felt familiar, but instead seemed completely alien. The main house, when it appeared, was a surprise. She had envisioned an ostentatious palace, but instead it was a tasteful, sprawling, ranch-style home made of natural stone and aged wood, designed to harmonize with the land instead of overpowering it. A man stood waiting on the porch. The adoption papers stated that William Harrison was 72 years old, yet he moved with his energy of a younger man, standing tall and broad, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. He projected an air of assurance that could only come from a life filled with achievements. But as Maggie exited the vehicle, that powerful confidence seemed to dissolve. "My heavens," he murmured, descending the steps to meet her. "You are the very image of your mother." They stood there in the bright Texas sun, a father and his daughter, seeing each other for the first time in 47 years. "I have no memory of her," Maggie said softly. "She was the most stunning woman I had ever seen, and the most gentle." William's voice was thick with unshed tears. You were only 6 months old when she died in a car wreck on a stormy night, the same way you lost your adoptive parents. It seems some families are plagued by misfortune. Why did you give me away? The question hung in the air between them, a direct and painful inquiry. William pointed to the chairs on the porch. Please, sit with me, and I will explain everything. They settled into large, comfortable rocking chairs that faced the vast ranch. Far off, horses could be seen grazing in lush, green fields. I was just 25 years old when you were born, William started, his speech falling into a cadence of someone who had told this story to himself countless times over the decades. I was young, foolish, and completely unready for fatherhood. Your mother's name was Sarah. She was only 22. We were not married, which was a much greater disgrace back then. He stopped for a moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon. After she passed away, I fell into a dark place. I started to drink, I quit my job, and I almost lost the entire company my father had established. My own father finally sat me down and gave me two paths to choose from. I could get my act together and raise you myself, or I could entrust you to a family that could offer you the love you needed while I rebuilt my life. And you chose the family. I chose what I believed was the right decision for you. The Morrisons were wonderful people, Sarah's cousin and her husband. They were unable to have their own children, and they made a solemn promise to cherish you as their own. William's voice cracked with emotion. I promised myself I would return for you as soon as I was capable of being the father you deserved. But you never came. I made every effort. Believe me, I truly did. But each time I thought I was getting closer, whether by hiring a new investigator or chasing down a new lead, an obstacle would appear. The adoption records were sealed, files went missing, and the Morrisons relocated and even changed their surname. By the time I was finally able to locate you again. You were 25 years old and married to that scoundrel you call a husband. A spark of defiance flared inside Maggie, even though she was just as angry with Rick. You have been monitoring me? I have been trying to keep you safe, William stated with conviction. Do you really believe it was pure chance that your husband's company secured so many advantageous oil deals over the years? Do you think he constructed his business empire based on his own abilities alone? His words struck Maggie with the force of a physical blow. You were helping Rick all this time? I was helping you. Every one of his accomplishments translated into a better existence for you. Each contract I directed his way was my method of caring for the daughter I was not allowed to acknowledge. Maggie shot up from her chair, pacing nervously at the porch's edge. You have been secretly controlling my entire life. I have been loving you in the only manner that was available to me. William's tone was firm but filled with sorrow. And now that lowlife is casting you aside for a young actress, after all I have done to support him. He is not aware, is he, that you are my father? He does not have a clue, but he is going to learn very soon. A sharp, unyielding quality entered William's voice. That young man believes he can defraud you, disgrace you, and escape without consequence. He is about to discover the price for double-crossing a Harrison. Maggie spun around to look at him. What are you suggesting? Before William could elaborate, Maggie's phone began to ring. The screen displayed the name David Martinez, Rick's attorney. Mrs. Reynolds, David's voice, was deliberately neutral. From a professional standpoint, I must inform you that your husband initiated divorce proceedings this morning. He is also seeking to freeze your shared assets and is arguing that you have no legal claim to any part of his business ventures. Maggie felt the color drain from her cheeks. Is he able to do that? He can certainly attempt it, Mrs. Reynolds. There is something more I must tell you. Criminal charges are also being prepared. The district attorney's office has reason to suspect your involvement in the embezzlement of funds from the charitable foundation. That is ridiculous. I had no part in that. I am aware of that, and you are aware of that. But the trail of evidence is leading to you. It appears your husband is arranging for you to take the blame for his own illegal actions." The phone suddenly felt immensely heavy in her hand. "What am I supposed to do?" "You need to retain the most skilled criminal defense lawyer you can find, and you need to do it immediately." Maggie ended the call and looked at William, who had overheard the entire conversation. "Now you listen to me, young lady," he said. William rose to his feet with the slow, measured pace of a man who had just settled on a course of action. "That serpent actually believes he can ruin my daughter and simply walk away," he declared. "He has just made the single greatest error of his miserable existence." "What are you planning to do?" Maggie asked. A faint smile touched William's lips, and for the very first time, Maggie truly saw the origin of her own unbreakable will. "Darling," he said, "you are about to receive a lesson in what genuine power truly is." In Manhattan, at that very moment, the scandal was erupting on every news station across the city. This is Channel 7 News reporting at noon. I am live outside Reynolds Industries, where our sources indicate that Chief Executive Officer Richard Reynolds' divorce from his wife Margaret has taken a shocking new direction. Federal prosecutors are now looking into claims of embezzlement from the Reynolds Family Foundation, a charity that has successfully raised over $50 million for children's causes in the last decade. The reporter, a woman with sharp eyes in a crimson suit, stood before the gleaming glass towers of the city's heart. A stream of employees flowed past in the background behind her. What makes this development so astonishing is that Mrs. Reynolds, who personally founded and managed the charity, is now being looked at as a potential accomplice in the theft of money that was designated to assist children in need. In the meantime, her husband has very publicly started a new life with actress Sophia Blake, who is said to be pregnant with his baby. Inside her brownstone in Brooklyn, Janet Cooper was managing a flood of phone calls, her anger growing by the second. "No comment, you vultures!" she yelled into the receiver before slamming it down on the third journalist to call in 10 minutes. "These people are like sharks that have smelled blood in the water." Her teenage daughter, Emma, came into the kitchen, her face full of concern. "Mom, why are there news trucks parked on our street?" "Because some people are morons who believe they have a right to tear down someone's life for their own amusement," Janet said. Janet declared, pouring herself an exceptionally large mug of coffee. The telephone rang once more. Janet looked at the screen, and her expression immediately softened. "Maggie, thank goodness. Where have you been?" "I am in Texas," Maggie's voice said, sounding crisp and clear despite the long distance. "Janet, they are attempting to pin Rick's embezzlement on me. I am aware, sweetheart. It is being reported everywhere. But Maggie, there is something else I need to tell you. I have been receiving calls from the press all morning, and they are investigating everything about you, your past, your adoptive family, even your time in college. What are they discovering? Nothing damaging, but they are raising questions about how a paralegal managed to marry a millionaire. They are trying to portray you as some kind of opportunist who married for money." On the other end of the phone, Maggie felt a familiar wave of indignation rise within her. Let them investigate. They are about to learn that I am not nearly as vulnerable as they believe. What is that supposed to mean? It means I am no longer just Richard Reynolds' discarded wife. I am the daughter of William Harrison. Janet almost let the phone slip from her hand. The oil tycoon? Maggie, are you being serious? Completely serious. And Janet, Rick is about to discover he chose the absolute wrong woman to antagonize. While Maggie was in Texas learning about her real family, the media frenzy back in New York was escalating to the level of a hurricane. Outside the Park Avenue penthouse, journalists had established a nearly permanent encampment, their cameras fixed on the building's sophisticated entrance. Rick had locked himself away in his office, rejecting all incoming calls and snapping at anyone who dared to interrupt him. The pressure was becoming visible. His normally immaculate hair was messy, his tie was crooked, and dark shadows had formed beneath his eyes. "Sir," Amanda said, knocking timidly on his office door. "Miss Blake has arrived to see you." "Let her in," Rick grumbled, his eyes still fixed on the legal papers spread all over his desk. Sophia Blake glided into the room as if she were entering a scene on a movie set. Even at 4 months along in her pregnancy, she was breathtaking, a vision of golden hair and striking curves. Dressed in a designer outfit that likely cost more than a person's monthly income. "Darling," she cooed, gracefully taking a seat in the chair opposite his desk. "You look absolutely dreadful." "It has been a trying day," Rick answered curtly. "The press is giving us no peace. My attorneys inform me the criminal probe is far more serious than we initially believed, and Maggie appears to have vanished." "Vanished? What are you talking about, vanished?" "I am saying she is not picking up her phone. She is not at her friend's house in Brooklyn, and the security team at the penthouse reports she has not been there since the day before yesterday." Rick finally lifted his gaze to meet Sophia's. "This is not unfolding as I had planned." Sophia casually inspected her flawlessly polished fingernails. "Darling, I warned you that throwing your wife out during a criminal investigation was poor timing. You should have held off until these legal issues were settled." "I could not hold off. You are pregnant." "The press was already aware of our relationship, and I had to control the narrative," Rick explained, rubbing his temples. "Besides, what power does Maggie have? She is a stay-at-home wife without any of her own money or any connections that I did not provide her. Perhaps, but a scorned woman can be a formidable opponent, darling, especially one who knows all of your secrets." Rick's phone vibrated with an incoming text from a number he did not recognize. He looked at it and felt his own blood begin to boil. The message read, "Your husband is unaware of the full truth of his actions. Meet me at Café Luna at 8 post meridian if you wish to help him before it is too late. A friend of Maggie's." "What is that?" Sophia inquired, seeing the change in his face. "It is nothing. Just more reporters trying to dig up a story." Rick erased the message, but an unsettling feeling about it lingered. Who would identify as Maggie's friend and offer to help him? Elsewhere in the city, the person who had sent that text was in a different office, making a completely different type of call. "Mr. Harrison, my name is David Martinez. I am Mrs. Reynolds' attorney. I believe it is time for us to speak about your daughter's predicament." William Harrison's voice boomed through the phone like a powerful winter gale. "Mr. Martinez, I have been anticipating a call. Exactly how much trouble is my little girl in?" "More than she currently understands, sir. Her husband has been exceptionally meticulous in arranging for her to take the blame for his own illegal activities. However, with your assets and my familiarity with the case, I am confident we can reverse the situation on him." "What do you require from me?" "For the time being, I only ask for your patience. Mrs. Reynolds must come back to New York to confront this situation directly. But when she returns, I intend to ensure she has every possible resource at her disposal." "Money is not a concern. This is not about money, Mr. Harrison. This is about influence, and your daughter is about to find out she possesses more of both than she ever knew." As evening fell over Manhattan, the elements of a far more complex strategy were clicking into position. Rick was convinced he had all the winning cards, but he was about to learn that some of the other players had been in the game for much longer than he had. And on the following day, when Maggie came back to New York, the true fight was set to commence. That next Monday, Maggie entered the most prestigious law firm in Manhattan. The sound of her heels echoing confidently on marble floors that could compete with anything in Rick's own building. The private jet had delivered her back to New York that morning, but she was arriving as an entirely new person. She was not the same woman who had run away in a state of shock only a few days prior. Whitman, Sterling, and associates took up a whole floor of a skyscraper on Park Avenue. Their waiting area was adorned with authentic oil paintings and leather seating that spoke of inherited wealth and established power. Mrs. Reynolds, a receptionist with a formal British accent, said with a smile, "Mr. Whitman is prepared for you." Charles Whitman was precisely as Maggie had imagined, 70 years old, with a full head of silver hair, and dressed in a suit that was likely more expensive than the average person's car. Yet his handshake was strong, and his eyes were sharp and full of intelligence. "Mrs. Reynolds, please have a seat. I have been looking over the details of your situation with considerable interest." His office provided a stunning view of Central Park through windows that stretched from the floor to the ceiling, bathing the room in sunlight. Walls were lined with legal texts, and diplomas from both Harvard and Yale were displayed in tasteful frames. "Mr. Whitman, I must know precisely what it is I am up against," Maggie stated, as she settled into a leather armchair that probably had a higher price tag than her very first automobile. "Allow me to be blunt, Mrs. Reynolds. Your husband has set up an elaborate and deceptive financial scheme. It was designed to embezzle millions of dollars from your charity foundation while framing you as the person behind it all." Whitman produced a substantial file. "He has been funneling money through accounts overseas, fabricating fraudulent paperwork, and getting ready to assert that you were the one who had both the opportunity and the reason to do it. But none of that is true."
So, this one?
"Of course it is not, but the trail of evidence he has manufactured is quite compelling. He has been laying the groundwork for this for a minimum of 2 years, Mrs. Reynolds. This was not an impulsive act. It was a premeditated plot to ruin you, both financially and legally, while ensuring his own protection." Maggie felt a cold knot form in the pit of her stomach. "How much money is involved?" "Roughly $12 million over a period of 3 years. That figure lingered in the space between them, like a pronouncement of doom. $12 million was more than enough to put her in prison for the remainder of her life. "However," Whitman said, and a shift in his tone caused Maggie to look up suddenly, "there have been some fascinating new developments that significantly alter the circumstances." "What do you mean? What kind of developments?" "Well, for starters, let's talk about your prenuptial agreement. I understand you signed one, is that correct?" "Yes, but it was drafted by Rick's attorneys. It essentially states that I receive nothing in the event of a divorce model. Under normal circumstances, you would be right. However, the agreement contains a special clause that makes it completely void if your husband engages in adultery or criminal activity. Since Mr. Reynolds is guilty of both, that prenuptial agreement is not worth the paper it is printed on." Maggie felt a tiny spark of hope. "So, I am entitled to half of his assets?" "Actually, Mrs. Reynolds, you are entitled to a great deal more than that." Whitman's smile was predatory, like a shark that had just smelled blood in the water. "You see, there is something your husband has no idea about regarding your financial standing. I do not have a financial standing. Everything is under his name. Mrs. Reynolds, have you ever heard of Heiress Petroleum?" The question seemed to come out of thin air. "I know it is a very large oil company in Texas. Why do you ask?" "Because, Mrs. Reynolds, you own 12% of that company and have since the day you turned 21. The word struck her with the force of a physical blow. "That is impossible. Your biological father, William Harrison, has been putting company stock in your name for more than 25 years. He established a trust that became available to you when you turned 21. But the legal documents were sealed until you consented to claim it." Whitman presented another stack of papers. "These stock transfers have been sitting securely in an escrow account, just waiting for you to acknowledge that you are his daughter." Maggie stared at the documents, trying to process the long strings of numbers. How much is 12% of Harrison Petroleum worth? At the current market value, it is worth approximately $200 million. The entire office seemed to tilt on its axis around her. $200 million. Just 2 days ago, she thought she was completely broke and about to face criminal charges, and now this attorney was informing her that she possessed more money than she could possibly imagine. Well, I will be, she breathed, echoing her adoptive father's most used expression. There is more, Mrs. Reynolds. Your father has also kept a record of every single business deal he arranged for your husband throughout the years, every oil contract, every beneficial agreement, and every single behind-the-scenes move that helped transform Reynolds Industries into the powerhouse it is today. He maintained detailed records, including taped conversations where your husband admitted that his success was a direct result of Mr. Harrison's influence. Whitman leaned in closer. Mrs. Reynolds, your father built your husband's entire empire as his way of taking care of you. And now that your husband has betrayed you, Mr. Harrison is ready to tear down everything he helped put together. Maggie rose and moved toward the windows, looking down upon the city that she had called home for more than 20 years. From this high up, everything looked different, smaller and much more manageable. Mrs. Reynolds, Whitman said softly, many women at your stage of life believe it is too late for a fresh start after their marriage fails. They feel they are too old, too stuck in their habits, too reliant on the lives they have created. But you are on the verge of proving that idea is completely false. She turned from the window to look at him. What is the first step? First, we are going to file for divorce and ask for emergency court orders to freeze all of your husband's financial assets while the embezzlement charges are investigated. Second, we will submit the evidence showing that you were manipulated and tricked by your husband, which establishes you as a victim instead of his partner in crime. Third, we will disclose your actual financial status, making it absolutely clear you have the money to see this fight through for however long it takes. And fourth, Whitman's smile was that of a predator. Fourth, we will completely destroy your husband to the point that he will spend every remaining day of his life wishing he had never even heard the name Harrison. Maggie felt a change deep inside her, a new, unshakable resolve she never knew she possessed. Mr. Whitman, I just have one question. Yes? How soon can we start this? How does tomorrow morning sound? Perfect. As Maggie walked out of the law firm, she understood that for the very first time in her adult life, she was the one holding all the cards. Rick believed he was playing chess, while she was playing checkers. He was about to learn she was engaged in a totally different game. That night, Maggie stood inside her penthouse for what she was certain would be the last time, taking in the sounds of the city far below. The home that had once seemed like a palace now felt more like a museum, gorgeous, pricey, and devoid of any genuine life. Janet was there, helping her pack, gently wrapping the few personal belongings Maggie wanted to take with her. I still just cannot believe it, Janet remarked, putting a framed picture of Maggie's adoptive parents into a cushioned box. $200 million, honey. Do you get that you are wealthier than some small countries? It does not feel real just yet, Maggie confessed, taking a final look at the master bedroom. 24 hours ago, I was convinced I was about to lose it all. Now I learn I never needed any of Rick's money to begin with. That has got to sting a little. What really stings is knowing that my father has been looking out for me my whole adult life, and I had no idea. Maggie lifted a jewelry box from the top of her dressing table. For all these years, I believed Rick was some kind of business genius, but it seems he was just riding the coattails of my father's kindness. Honey, let me tell you something, Janet said, starting her favorite catchphrase. Karma has an impeccable sense of timing. Your narcissistic ex-husband chose the absolute worst woman he could possibly betray. Maggie's phone began to ring. The screen showed the name William Harrison. "Hello, Daddy," she answered, the word still feeling unfamiliar as she said it. "How are you holding up, little girl?" "Better than I thought I would be. Charles Whitman explained the whole situation to me today. Charlie is a good man. He has been my lawyer for 30 years. William's tone was kind but firm. "Are you prepared for what is coming?" "I believe so, but I have to ask you something. Anything. Why did you not just tell me the truth all those years ago? Why did you let me stay married to Rick when you were aware of the kind of man he truly was?" The silence from the other end of the line stretched on for so long that Maggie worried they had been disconnected. "Because I was a coward," William finally admitted. "I was terrified that if I reached out, you would push me away. I was worried you would assume I was trying to buy your affection after leaving you when you were a baby. So I told myself that helping you from afar was good enough. And now I see that I have wasted 47 years being scared when I could have been getting to know my own daughter. I do not want to waste another minute." Maggie felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Neither do I." "Good, because tomorrow we're going to show that snake exactly what happens when he picks a fight with a Harrison woman." After ending the call, Maggie made a few calculated phone calls of her own. Her first was to the society columnist at the New York Post, who had been trying to get a hold of her for days. "This is Margaret Reynolds. I believe you have been trying to reach me. Mrs. Reynolds, thank you so much for returning my call. We would be very interested in getting your side of the story regarding your husband's affair and these criminal allegations." "I will give you an exclusive interview," Maggie cut in, "but only on the condition that you publish exactly what I provide at the precise time I tell you to publish it." "Well, that is not typically how we operate. Do you want the biggest story of the year, or do you want to continue chasing down tips that will be old news by this time next week?" There was a brief silence. "What kind of story are we talking about here?" "The kind of story that shatters careers and builds new ones." "Are you interested?" "Extremely interested." "Good. I will call you tomorrow night with all the details." Her next call was to the event coordinator who arranged the charity galas for their foundation. "Caroline, it is Maggie Reynolds. I need your help organizing an event for tomorrow evening." "Maggie, I heard the news about the divorce. Are you okay?" "I am better than okay. I need you to arrange a small get-together, maybe 50 people, the usual guest list, but please ensure Richard and Sophia Blake receive an invitation." "Are you certain that is a good idea, considering the circumstances?" "Caroline, just trust me on this. And be sure to let everyone know that I will be making a significant announcement concerning the future of the foundation." Her last call was to David Martinez, Rick's attorney, who had been attempting to contact her for several days. "Mr. Martinez, this is Margaret Reynolds. I was told you have been trying to get in touch with me." "Mrs. Reynolds, thank you for the call back. I was hoping to go over a potential plea deal related to the embezzlement charges." "I have no interest in a plea deal. Mrs. Reynolds, I strongly suggest you think about your choices carefully. The evidence against you is very strong, and the district attorney is presenting an extremely generous offer. Mr. Martinez, let me save us both some time. I am not going to plead guilty to crimes I did not commit just to shield my husband from the punishment for crimes he did commit. Mrs. Reynolds, I do not believe you grasp the gravity of your legal troubles. Oh, I understand it completely. The real question is, do you understand yours?" "I am sorry, I am not sure what you mean." "You will find out tomorrow. Good evening, Mr. Martinez." As Maggie finished packing the last of her personal items, her phone lit up with a text message from Rick. "Maggie, we have to talk. This has all gone too far. Call me. She looked at his message for a long time before she typed a reply. You are right, Richard. This has gone too far. We will talk tomorrow at the plaza. Come by yourself. His answer was almost instant. What is happening at the plaza? Your day of reckoning. Janet looked over from the box she was taping shut. Are you absolutely sure you are ready for this? Janet, I have spent 22 years playing the part of the perfect corporate wife. I have been courteous, encouraging, and agreeable. I have allowed people to misjudge me because it was simpler than putting up a fight. Maggie taped the final box closed and surveyed the empty penthouse. But that woman is gone, and tomorrow, everyone is going to meet the real Margaret Harrison. I truly love the sound of that name. As do I. As they departed the penthouse, a feeling of closure washed over Maggie, something she had not anticipated. She was not merely ending a marriage, she was shedding a version of herself that had been too confined for the life she was destined to lead. Tomorrow, inside the Plaza Hotel, Richard Reynolds would realize he had made the most significant error of his life, and she planned to savor every moment of his dawning comprehension. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was humming with the conversations of New York's most powerful people, the clinking of crystal glasses, and the gentle sounds of an orchestra. On such short notice, Caroline had worked miracles. The room was adorned with white orchids and bathed in golden light, creating a mood of sophisticated intimacy that spoke of generational wealth and long-held secrets. Maggie stood in the private elevator that ascended to the ballroom, dressed in a navy blue Valentino gown that cost $15,000. It was money she had happily spent from her newly found Harrison Petroleum account. Her hair was swept into a graceful updo, and she wore a pair of diamond earrings that had belonged to her birth mother, a gift from William just that morning. You look lovely, my dear, William said while adjusting his black tie. At 72 years old, he still commanded a room, with his perfectly coiffed silver hair and flawless tuxedo. Your mother would be incredibly proud. Are you certain this is the best way to handle this? Maggie asked, a flutter of nerves in her stomach. Perhaps we should have just allowed the lawyers to manage everything. Sweetheart, men like your husband only respond to one thing: public disgrace. He attempted to ruin you in the most open way imaginable. So we are simply going to do the same for him. William's smile was razor sharp. Besides, is it not about time that New York society met the true Margaret Harrison? The elevator doors slid open, and they walked into the ballroom, side by side. The impact was instantaneous and powerful. Conversations halted in the middle of sentences as every head turned to gaze at Maggie and the distinguished man with her. She had been to hundreds of functions like this over the years, but always as Richard Reynolds' wife, hidden in his shadow. Tonight she was the undeniable focus of all attention. Is that Margaret Reynolds? She overheard someone whisper. Who is that gentleman with her? She seems changed, more confident. Maggie moved through the gathering with her chin held high, receiving air kisses and polite words from individuals who had been ignoring her calls for days. It is remarkable how quickly people's attitudes shift when you show up with clear signs of wealth and influence. Margaret, my dear? Caroline hurried toward them, her event planner's smile looking a little tense. You look absolutely breathtaking, and this must be your companion. Caroline, I would like to introduce my father, William Harrison. If Caroline knew the name, her professional training kept her from showing it, but Maggie noticed her eyes widened just a fraction. It is a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Harrison. Margaret has told us so much about you. Actually, Maggie replied with a grin, I have only known him for a couple of days. We have a great deal of lost time to make up for. On the other side of the large room, she saw Rick by the bar with Sophia Blake. Even from that distance, She could see his confusion turn into rising panic as he watched her navigate the room. She moved with a grace and self-assurance he had never witnessed in her before. Sophia was stunning in a red gown that highlighted her pregnancy, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves. She looked every bit the movie star that Maggie knew she was. "Shall we go and greet your husband?" William inquired, offering her his arm. "My ex-husband," Maggie corrected him. "And yes, let us go." They moved across the ballroom like a ship parting the waves, the crowd separating to let them pass. Rick's face became visibly paler as they drew closer to him. "Richard," Maggie said as they arrived at the bar, "you seem surprised to see me." "Maggie?" Rick's voice was strained with tightly controlled anger. "I did not think you would show up tonight." "Well, you are always telling me how crucial it is to keep up appearances." She then faced Sophia with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "And you must be Sophia. My congratulations on your pregnancy." Sophia tilted her chin up in defiance. "Thank you, my dear. Richard and I are extremely happy." "I am certain you are." Maggie's voice was cool and neutral. "Richard, I would like you to meet my father, William Harrison." All the color instantly vanished from Rick's face. "Your father?" "That is correct, son," William stated, his Texas accent suddenly more noticeable. "I am Margaret's father, the man who has been quietly looking out for her for the last 22 years. The wineglass fell from Rick's hand, shattering against the marble floor. "You are William Harrison from Harrison Petroleum?" "I certainly am. And you are the scoundrel who has been stealing from my daughter." The discussion was beginning to draw a crowd. Other guests started to move in closer, sensing a dramatic scene unfolding. "I have no idea what you are talking about," Rick started, but his voice was missing its usual authority. "I know everything, young man. Every contract I sent your way, every deal I helped arrange, and every favor I used to help you build your little empire." William's voice was quiet, but it carried, intended for everyone to hear. "I know about the $12 million you embezzled from the children's charity. I know about the forged documents you used to frame my daughter, and I know you plan to ruin her name to protect your own worthless reputation." "That is not true. I did not," Rick stammered, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "Darling," Sophia said, her voice unusually high-pitched, "perhaps we ought to go." "A wonderful idea, Miss Blake," Maggie said. "But before you leave, I have some interesting information you might want to know about your fiancé's business empire." "We are not engaged," Sophia replied quickly. "Not yet, no, but I am sure Richard has promised you a fabulous life after our divorce is settled, and he gets his hands on all that money." Maggie smiled pleasantly. "The only issue is that there is not going to be any money." "What are you saying?" Rick demanded. "I am saying that every single major contract your company has had for the last 20 years was set up by my father. Every oil agreement, every government deal, every piece of business that made you a rich man. It was all because of Harrison Petroleum's influence." The circle of onlookers around them was getting bigger, captivated by the spectacle of New York's newest scandal happening right before their eyes. "And as of this morning," William added, "every last one of those contracts has been canceled." The color in Rick's face shifted from pale to a sickly green. "You cannot do that. I can do anything I want, son. It is my oil, my contracts, and my business connections." William's smile was like a predator's. "It seems that when you betray a man's daughter, he has a tendency to take it very personally." "Ladies and gentlemen," the band leader called out, seemingly oblivious to the drama at the bar, "Mr. Richard Reynolds would like to make an announcement." All attention shifted to Rick, who looked like a man completely trapped. Maggie knew he had probably intended to announce his engagement to Sophia that night. He likely thought it was the perfect final move to secure his victory over the wife he had cast aside. "Go on, my love," Sophia urged in a whisper. Tell them about us. Rick moved slowly toward the microphone, set up by the orchestra, his face as white as a sheet. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight. I have an announcement to make concerning my future plans. He stopped, looking over the crowd of New York's elite, who were all watching him with intense focus. Actually, Maggie said, stepping up, I believe I will be the one making the announcement. She approached the microphone with the poise of someone who had just realized she controlled the entire room. Rick made a move to intercept her, but William's firm hand on his shoulder held him back. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Margaret Harrison Reynolds, she started, her voice ringing out clearly across the ballroom. Many of you have known me as Richard's wife, but tonight I want to introduce myself as the daughter of William Harrison. A wave of murmurs swept through the room like a jolt of electricity. There was not a single person there who did not know the name William Harrison. For the last 22 years, I have stood beside my husband as he created what looked like a business empire. Tonight, I want to reveal some truths about how that empire was actually built and what is about to happen to it. Rick lunged for the microphone again, but this time David Martinez blocked his way. Maggie's eyes widened in surprise as she saw that Rick's own attorney was stopping him. Mr. Martinez, she said into the microphone, would you care to tell everyone what you shared with me this afternoon? David Martinez stepped up, his professional calm completely unshaken by the surrounding chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, as of this afternoon, Mr. Richard Reynolds is facing a federal indictment for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. The charges are related to his theft of more than $12 million from the Reynolds Family Foundation. The ballroom burst into an uproar. Cameras flashed from all directions as the society photographers captured the stunning turn of events. Rick just stood there, completely frozen, as the world he had so carefully built crumbled all around him. Furthermore, Martinez went on, Mrs. Reynolds has been completely exonerated of all accusations and is now officially considered a victim of Mr. Reynolds's criminal activities. This is unbelievable, Sophia Blake exclaimed, her acting skills finally surfacing as she saw the need to get away from the train wreck. Darling, I knew nothing about any of this. I absolutely cannot be connected to any criminal behavior. With one last look, she turned and walked away, her red dress a flash of color that vanished into the crowd. Rick just stared after her, his face a mask of a man watching his only hope disappear forever. Richard, Maggie's voice cut through the uproar. You asked what happens when a man throws away a 22-year marriage for a younger woman. Rick finally turned to her, his expression completely shattered. You learn, she said, that you were never worthy of what you had to begin with. As police officers moved in to lead Rick out of the ballroom, Maggie stood at the microphone. She felt something brand new, the satisfying taste of justice being served perfectly. If I could have your attention, William said, coming to stand beside his daughter, I would like to introduce you to the new president of the Harrison Foundation for Women's Empowerment, my daughter, Margaret Harrison. The room exploded with thunderous applause, but Maggie hardly noticed. Her eyes were fixed on Rick as he was led away in handcuffs. She finally understood that some chapters in life are not just closed, they are completely rewritten. An uproar had taken over the ballroom, but a strange sense of peace washed over Maggie as she approached the microphone. Cameras flashed like lightning, reporters surged forward, shouting questions, and New York's elite society buzzed with the thrill of seeing the scandal of the decade unfold live. Ladies and gentlemen, Maggie said, her voice slicing through the noise, if you would give me your attention for just a few more moments. The crowd fell silent. They were captivated by the composure of a woman who should have been falling apart, but who instead radiated a quiet and powerful strength. "22 years ago, I married Richard Reynolds," she began. "I married him because I loved him, and I believed in the man I thought he was. Tonight, I need you all to see the man he truly is." She motioned to David Martinez, who stepped forward holding a briefcase filled with documents. "Mr. Martinez, could you please explain to everyone what we found when we looked into the finances of Reynolds Industries?" David Martinez opened his briefcase with the careful precision of someone who had long prepared for this exact moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, our investigation revealed that Mr. Reynolds has been methodically stealing funds from the Reynolds Family Foundation for more than 3 years, but he did more than that. He also created false documents to make it seem as though his wife was the person behind the entire scheme." A collective gasp went through the room. Financial crimes were one thing, but setting up your own wife was something else entirely. "The evidence against him is overwhelming," Martinez went on. "We found forged signatures on bank transfers, emails sent from Mrs. Reynolds' computer after Mr. Reynolds had accessed it, and even fake meeting notes claiming she had approved the transfers." Rick, standing between two police officers, tried to shout over him. "That is not true. Maggie knew all about it. She signed those papers." "I signed blank pages you claimed were for insurance," Maggie said into the microphone, her voice perfectly steady. "I trusted the man I was married to for 22 years when he asked me to sign papers for our family's financial planning. The digital evidence is perfectly clear," Martinez added.
But,
Mr. Reynolds used his administrator access to his wife's email to send approval messages that she never even saw. He scheduled them to go out at times when Mrs. Reynolds was at charity functions. This created an alibi for her, making it look like she was in two places at once, conducting criminal business. "But why?" someone shouted from the audience. "Why would Richard want to destroy his own wife?" William Harrison stepped up to the microphone next to his daughter. "Because he needed someone to take the fall for his crimes, and he thought my daughter was an easy target." His voice was heavy with the authority of decades of power and influence. What he failed to realize was that Margaret is far stronger than he ever gave her credit for, and he certainly did not know that she had a father protecting her from the shadows for the last 22 years. "Mr. Harrison," a reporter called out, "could you clarify your connection to Mr. Reynolds' business empire?" "I would be happy to." William's smile was as sharp as a knife. "Every single major contract that Reynolds Industries has secured for the past 2 decades was because of my influence. Every oil agreement, every government project, every business partnership that made Richard Reynolds a wealthy man, I made it happen." A low murmur spread through the crowd like a wave. Everyone immediately understood the implication. "I built that man's entire empire as a way to provide for my daughter, who I was never able to claim because of sealed adoption papers. I sent business his way. I opened every door for him, and I made him richer than he could have ever dreamed, all so my daughter could have a comfortable life." Rick's face went from pale white to a sickly gray. "You are lying. I built my company with my own hard work." "Son, you could not negotiate your way out of a wet paper bag without me," William cut in. "I have recordings of every phone call we have had over the years, documents detailing every favor I used on your behalf, and witnesses to every deal I set up for you." He took out a small digital recorder and hit the play button. Rick's voice, clear and damning, filled the silent ballroom. "Bill, I need you to speak with Senator Morrison about that pipeline deal. Without your backing, Reynolds Industries does not even stand a chance. You know I am completely reliant on your connections for these government contracts." "That conversation happened 3 years ago," Williams said, stopping the recording. "I have dozens more that sound just like it." The police officers on either side of Rick tightened their grip as he started to sway. "And as of this morning," William continued, "every one of those contracts has been officially canceled. Reynolds Industries will be declaring bankruptcy by the end of the week." Sophia Blake, who had been trying to slip out toward the exit, froze in place. Her face turned ghost white as she understood what this meant for her. Furthermore, Martinez added, the criminal probe has grown wider. We have found evidence that Mr. Reynolds was also involved in tax evasion, securities fraud, and laundering money through offshore accounts. Federal prosecutors are estimating he will face between 20 and 30 years in prison, Williams said, with deep satisfaction. That is assuming he is found guilty on all charges, which seems very likely with this mountain of evidence. Rick finally managed to speak. This is all a lie. You are destroying me because you cannot handle that I fell in love with someone else. No, Richard, Maggie said, stepping back to the microphone. You destroyed yourself when you decided that stealing from charities for children was an acceptable thing to do. You destroyed yourself when you decided to frame me for your crimes. And you destroyed yourself when you completely underestimated the woman you were married to for 22 years. She paused, gazing at the crowd of faces that had been her social world for decades. I want everyone here to understand something. For 22 years, I thought I was nothing without my husband. I believed his success was my safety net, his approval was my self-worth, and his love defined who I was. Her voice gained strength with every word she spoke. Tonight I learned that I am the daughter of one of the most powerful men in America. I learned that I have access to more money than I ever thought possible. But the most important thing I've learned is that my value has absolutely nothing to do with any man's opinion of me. The applause that followed was loud, genuine, and long. These people knew strength when they saw it, and they were watching a new power player being born right before their eyes. The Harrison Foundation for Women's Empowerment will be focused on helping women over 50 who are beginning new chapters in their lives, Maggie announced. Whether they are escaping abusive marriages, launching new careers, or just learning to see their own value after years of putting everyone else first. What will happen to Mr. Reynolds' company? A reporter shouted. What about it? William shot back. It is worthless without my contracts, and it is toxic because of his criminal activity. I would not be surprised if the creditors sell off every last asset within 60 days. Rick was led away in handcuffs, his entire empire collapsing behind him like a sandcastle against the tide. As the officers guided him through the crowd, Maggie heard him say one final thing. You will never be happy without me, Maggie. You are nothing without me. She looked at him with an expression that might have been pity. No, Richard. You are the one who is nothing without me. You just never took the time to realize it. As the ballroom gradually emptied out, with reporters scrambling to file their stories and socialites gossiping about the night's its explosive events, Maggie stood with her father near the empty microphone. How are you feeling, little girl? William asked gently. Free, she replied, without a moment's hesitation. For the first time in my adult life, I feel completely and totally free. And what do you plan to do with all that freedom? Maggie smiled, looking out at the glittering city lights beyond the ballroom's towering windows. Change the world, Dad, starting tomorrow. 6 months later, Maggie was resting on the porch of her new Texas ranch house, taking in the serene sounds of horses and the wind moving through the trees. The rising sun cast shades of gold and amber across the rolling hills, and the air carried the scent of fresh grass and new beginnings. Although the house was more modest than her Manhattan penthouse, it felt immeasurably more spacious. Constructed from native stone and weathered wood, it blended with the landscape instead of overpowering it. Every room was bathed in natural light, and each window framed a view of the ranch that was steadily becoming her genuine home. Her phone chimed, breaking the quiet of her morning reflection. The screen displayed Janet Cooper's name. Honey, I have some news for you. Janet's familiar voice came in. sharp and clear, despite the miles. It seems karma has an impeccable sense of timing. What has happened now? Maggie inquired, sinking more comfortably into her rocking chair. Your narcissistic former husband received his sentence yesterday. He got 25 years with no chance of parole for at least 15. And listen to this. Sophia Blake gave testimony against him in return for complete immunity from prosecution. Maggie experienced a brief spark of what could have been satisfaction, but it was quickly replaced by a profound sense of relief. So, it is truly finished? It is truly finished. Rick Reynolds will be an elderly man by the time he leaves prison, if he even lives that long. And apparently, Sophia Blake is now seeing some tech billionaire out in Silicon Valley. The baby, a little girl, was born last month, by the way. I hope she is more intelligent than her parents, Maggie remarked, and she truly meant it. And speaking of intelligent women, I read the article in the Times about your foundation. $5 million raised in just 6 months. That is incredible. Maggie smiled, her thoughts turning to the letters she received each day from women all over the country. They were women who had discovered the strength to escape bad marriages, begin new careers, or simply learn to see their own worth for the first time in their lives. The money is helpful, but the stories are what truly count. Yesterday, I received a letter from a woman in Ohio who left her abusive husband after 30 years together. She is 58 years old, and she just launched her own business. What type of business? She creates custom quilts. She mentioned that she had always dreamed of doing it, but her husband insisted it was a waste of her time. Maggie's voice filled with warmth. She included a picture of her first paid project. A wedding quilt she made for her daughter. It was absolutely beautiful. You are changing lives, Maggie. We are changing lives. The foundation is only the start of it all. When her call with Janet ended, Maggie went to her home office, a bright room that looked out over the horse pastures. The walls were covered with thank you notes from women who had been awarded grants by the Heiress Foundation, with each one serving as proof of the power of a second chance. Her laptop sounded with a notification for a new email. It came from Dr. Sarah Chen, a 53-year-old physician who had used a foundation grant to establish a free clinic for women's health in a rural part of Montana. Dear Mrs. Harrison, the email started. I wanted to give you an update on how the clinic is doing. In our first 3 months, we have provided care to more than 300 women, a large number of whom had never received adequate medical attention before. Your foundation gave me more than money. It gave me the confidence to follow a dream I had set aside when I married 30 years ago. Thank you for reminding me that it is never too late to become the person you were always meant to be. Maggie printed out the email, placing it on the growing pile of success stories on her desk. Every single letter was a reminder of why she had embarked on this new path. A gentle knock at her office door broke her train of thought. William stood in the entryway, holding 2 mugs of coffee and dressed in his usual weekend attire of jeans and a work shirt. Good morning, little girl. How are my world changers this morning? Changing the world, one woman at a time, Maggie answered, taking the coffee with a grateful smile. What is on your plan for the day? I was thinking I would ride out to the north pasture to look in on the new foals. Would you like to join me? I would love that. They saddled up 2 horses and rode together across the ranch in a comfortable quiet. The bond between the father and daughter was still developing, but it became stronger with each passing day. William had shown great patience while Maggie learned how to trust again, and she had been gracious as he figured out how to be a father to an adult woman. I received a call from Charlie Whitman yesterday, William mentioned as they stopped to admire a mare and her foal grazing in the morning light. It was about the Reynolds Industries bankruptcy. The final liquidation is now complete. The creditors were able to get back about 30 cents for every dollar they were owed. Everything else was consumed by legal expenses and Rick's criminal dealings. Maggie felt a brief wave of sympathy for the employees who had been left without jobs, but she felt no regret over Rick's ultimate failure. And the penthouse? It was sold at auction. Some technology entrepreneur from California was the buyer. William's smile was ironic. He paid roughly half of what Rick had originally paid for it. And just like that, our old life is completely gone. Your old life, William corrected her softly. Your new life is only just starting. They made their way back to the house as the sun ascended in the Texas sky. Following lunch, Maggie drove into Dallas to be a guest speaker at the Women's Business Network's monthly gathering. The ballroom at the Adolphus Hotel was filled to capacity with women from every generation, from young college graduates to experienced executives. Maggie took her place at the podium and gazed at the faces that mirrored her own past experiences. 6 months ago, I believed my life was finished, she started. I was 47 years old, in the middle of a divorce, facing potential criminal charges, and I was utterly convinced that my best days were gone forever. The entire room fell silent, captivated by her every word. For 22 years, I had built my identity around someone else's achievements, someone else's validation, someone else's affection. When all of that was stripped away, I believed I was left with nothing. She took a moment, connecting with women across the room. I was mistaken. I did not have nothing left. I had all the tools I needed. I possessed intelligence, life experience, and resolve. More than anything else, I had the courage to begin again. A woman seated in the first row put her hand up. Miss Harrison, it is much simpler to start again when you come into $200 million. What about the rest of us who do not have that kind of resource? Maggie offered a smile. You are completely correct. Money certainly makes things less difficult, but money cannot generate courage, it cannot forge a vision, and it cannot give you the sheer will to rebuild your world from the ground up. She walked away from the podium, getting nearer to the attendees. The very first action I took did not involve spending any money. It was making a call to a father I had never met. The second action was confronting a man who had controlled me for so many years. The third action was entering a courtroom and speaking the truth about my life. But what if we are afraid? Another woman called out. Then you are perfectly normal, Maggie answered with a laugh. I was absolutely terrified every day for months on end. There are still days when I feel scared. Fear does not prevent you from starting over. It simply indicates that you are doing something significant enough to matter. Following the speech, a crowd of women gathered around Maggie, all eager to tell their own stories. There was a 60-year-old accountant launching her own company, a 55-year-old teacher working on her first book, and a 49-year-old mother of 3 who was returning to school to become a doctor. You have given us hope, one woman told her, her eyes wet with tears. You have demonstrated that our lives are not finished, just because our marriages have ended. While driving back to the ranch that evening, Maggie considered how profoundly things had changed. 6 months prior, she had been Margaret Reynolds, a woman who lived in the shade of her husband's accomplishments. Tonight, she was Margaret Harrison, a woman who was forging her own legacy. Her phone vibrated with an incoming text from Janet. I caught your speech on the local news. You are going to be a force to be reckoned with now that you have all this confidence. Maggie smiled and typed a reply. I certainly hope I will be. As she turned into her driveway, she noticed William on the porch with a bottle of wine and a pair of glasses. How did the speech go? He inquired as she took the seat next to him. I believe we may have enlisted a few more world changers today. Good, because the world could use some changing. They sat together in a peaceful quiet, observing the sun as it set behind the rolling Texas hills. In the distance, horses grazed contentedly, and the first few stars started to emerge in the darkening sky. "Daddy," Maggie said, testing a word that still felt unfamiliar but was becoming more natural. "Do you ever have regrets about the decisions you made when I was a child?" William remained silent for a considerable time. "I regret that I was too fearful to be the kind of father you needed, but I have no regrets about the woman you have become. You possess a strength I never had, little girl. You are going to achieve things I could never have imagined." "We are going to achieve things," Maggie corrected him. Together, William affirmed. As night enveloped them, Maggie experienced a serenity she had never known was possible. For the very first time in her life, she was in the exact place she was meant to be, doing the exact work she was meant to do. Her phone lit up with a final email for the day. It was from a young woman in Seattle who had learned about the foundation through an online article. "Dear Mrs. Harrison," the note began, "I am 28 years old, and I am navigating a very painful divorce. My husband was manipulative and emotionally abusive, and for the last 5 years, I have believed that I am without value on my own. Discovering your story has given me a glimmer of hope that I might be able to put my life back together as well. I am not sure if you consider applicants who are my age, but I needed you to know that you have already supported me simply by showing me what is achievable." Maggie immediately wrote back, "Dear Sarah, courage does not have an age limit, starting over at 28, which means you have plenty of time to create the future you have always wanted. Give our office a call on Monday because we want to help." After sending the message, she relaxed in her chair and gazed at the countless stars that lit up the Texas night sky. "What is on your mind?" William asked her. "I am thinking about every woman who feels lost and alone tonight, believing their life is finished simply because someone made them feel worthless." Maggie spoke with a gentle yet firm voice. "I am thinking about all the people we can inspire, all the futures we can help build, and all the dreams we can make a reality. I also realize that for 47 years I saw myself as only a housewife, but it seems I was made for something more." William lifted his glass of wine. "Here is to something more, to a fresh start," Maggie answered, as her glass met his. While they enjoyed the quiet evening on the ranch house porch, surrounded by the calm sounds of a Texas night, Maggie understood a powerful truth. Sometimes the greatest part of your story begins when another person decides to end theirs with you. She had discovered that finding financial freedom after 50 is achievable. She saw that women who lift each other up can make incredible things happen, and that changing your life in your middle years can transform you from a victim into a hero. The most significant lesson was that you can always find out who you were truly meant to be. The night sky watched over Margaret Harrison, the heir to an oil fortune and the head of a foundation. She was the perfect example that the best way to get back at someone is to live an amazing life. Her journey was far from over. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own strength, please hit that like button and share it with a woman who needs to hear this today. Drop a comment below telling me, have you ever discovered you were stronger than you thought? And if you haven't subscribed yet, join our family so you never miss another powerful story like this one. This content was carefully researched, crafted, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful stories and valuable life lessons. Thank you for listening until the end.